we will start a panel on HPC for cross-institutional access, challenges and solutions. And the moderator for this session will be Ilja Livenson from Tartu, Estonia.
Hi, thank you. If I could see my slides, thank you very much. I have several slides to start with, and essentially the topic of this session was to figure out what problems are there when we try to start going beyond a single organization, and also what actually solutions are there. So we wanted to be a bit more positive, you know. And about myself, so I have been unfortunately working for quite a long time already in IT, so calculated that slightly more than 20 years from the first IT job. And for the last years, I've been involved in projects which primarily deal with the cross-organizational service delivery. So government clouds, EOS projects, or in research infrastructures like at ICE in Estonia. And as part of that, I also started becoming the Walder product owner. This is the software that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. So if you're here, please visit. And in that sense, this is just to highlight that I have been seeing quite many different issues that arise over time. And primarily that happens when organization starts to grow. So in case of HPCs, a quite classical case is that you start with a small organizational department that serves the needs of the users, and everything is perfect. So you have 10 users, you have one IT guy, everybody knows everybody, you get preferential treatments, great service. The problem comes when you start getting ideas that let's maybe not do that in every institute or every department, let's start consolidating. So you end up, as a first step, on the potentially common service for the organization. So like HPC center of the university is a classical example of that. As things progress, you might end up in a situation when the service becomes useful and needed by other organizations, and there is a political decision to start collaborating. As such, you suddenly get users from other organizations that are, technically speaking, not in your LDAP tree, but more importantly, not users that you actually have trust with. So you get a different set of problems. If things work out and the services become more and more popular, you might end up even with becoming a national infrastructure, meaning when collaborators and users suddenly start coming from the whole country. And of course, in Europe, that typically means that you end up also collaborating with other organizations outside the country. So you end up also with the issues connected with the cross-border access. And classically, the more users you have, the more diverse services become. So you end up growing not just in number of users, but also in number of services that you provide, which obviously introduces a different set of issues. So I try to maybe summarize slightly what are the sort of main challenges that you experience as you grow. And again, it's not always that you grow. So in many cases, you stay as a service organization. So the challenges will not be there. But the main problem is that with a larger number of users, you get more support tickets. So nowadays, offering a service without support is tricky. So the more users, the more support. It's very hard to scale. We have been discussing, especially in the case of Lumi now, there is an attempt to use ChatGPT to solve at least basic questions of users. We'll see how it goes. Another problem is that with the growth of users, you get users from more and more diverse backgrounds. So not just the same organization, but potentially users from industry, users from other continents, users that do not have any digital identity. So how to solve that? How to address that, and what are the solutions in order to make service still usable, but the users trustworthy. In many cases, we have seen that it's quite easy to avoid having any kind of self-service or automation when users can just say what they want, and the system administrator delivers that. Or people with privileged access use some kind of manual automation to run a script and to do that. That works, but over time, it becomes more and more clear that just having a sort of manual interface is quite bad for the quality of service. So users of HPC services are, generally speaking, often users also of public cloud providers, and they are getting used to a certain level of quality that you have to sort of provide nowadays also on the academia or HPC context. So basically, that's there is no good solution apart from automation. And if at some point in time the need for the real industry collaboration comes into play, then suddenly we are talking about proper accounting, traceable, figuring out who are the actual consumers to fix the VAT rates and so on. So all these issues come into play that need to be solved somehow. Actually, the user transactions and this need for accounting is some motivation why we started the Waldro project that I'm going to talk more in details about. And the last issue that I see that as a really something that happens as you grow in terms of the number of users is the fact that with the growth of number of services, of different accesses to the infrastructure that you have, you end up with a situation when you have to start figuring out how can you actually enforce certain security policies across different methods of access. And this becomes more and more relevant with the upcoming NIS2 regulations, with the adoption of the providing of the services for the sensitive data processing and so on and so forth. So in many cases, the traditional methods that actually worked in a group of 10 people become not really obsolete, but they need to be extended. And so this session is essentially about hearing what methods or solutions to these issues are there. So we have three presenters, Ivars from RTU, who will talk about challenges of access to the resources in Latvia. Michal from GEÁNT about the global identity called MyAccessID that is being developed and used, for example, in Lumi. And finally, Mads about the methods for enforcing common security requirements, showing how to do that, showing a prototype how to do that over SSH and, well, actually using MyAccessID, I guess. At least that was for a very classical method of access to the HPC over SSH. So, if I may call Ivars first.
Yeah, hello. I will try to be very time efficient. So basically, I'm not a very long time in RTU, but I have been previously in Latvia's higher education and research science shared service center. So I have seen quite a lot of those problems what institutions has with access and identity and how wide it is actually used in Latvia. And one of our RTU challenges as well is actually the identity kind of receiving from another parties. It is slightly resolved right now, but it's not kind of good solution. It requires some Tartu University and another participant actually help for us, and it does not work very well. And another thing is that if some new institution in Latvia would like to join the same so-called EduGAIN, we will actually be struggling a lot because in Latvia it was not developed for 10 years, so it was kind of in fixed status. So now we are joining more not only universities but also research institutions, and there is big issue that those universities and also research institutions do not see really use cases. For example, we have discussed with Riga Stradiņš University. They have 5 users in our HPC center, and they actually do not care too much about changing authentication methods because for 5 users it's quite easy to manage it. So why to bother someone? Another thing is when we are adding some institutions, we still have to grant access based on particular persons. We are not provisioning automatically something. We discussed even inside RTU, for example, granting some resources for our students in particular courses, for example. Even then, it's not so easy to identify which students are in those courses and so on. And not because of HPC solutions, it's because of our university's Active Directory. We don't have that information about courses. We have some information which we can distinguish whether it's employee or student, but we can't distinguish about some more detailed parameters, which is a very big issue if we would like to open it to wider public for doing some kind of practical works and so on. But here we are looking how to solve it and how we actually do it more available. Yeah, then what's additionally is everything should be billed. We have to issue invoice to someone, whether it's internal money transfer, whether it's a real invoice. And this billing is a very big headache because we have to agree beforehand we are starting to use the resources. And this process is very challenging, as not all organizations would like to sign up on the same kind of agreement. Not all are kind of ready for the same rules. And if there is some data involved, private data, private person data, then it actually is very, very complicating process, and sometimes ends up that no one is ready to complete it because so many obstacles. Additionally, what we have is also this limitation on some of the hardware that we can't use it for some kind of researches which are commercial and so on. And there is also in Latvia issue if for large amount of data storage we need access from HPC side, then it's not so easy to organize. We have some storage with low reliability where we have some donation from one of company, but it's not so that we can actually do it easily between organizations. We can do inside HPC site, which is organized locally on HPC cluster, but if it's cross-institutional sharing, then actually we have really limitations, yeah. And the next level, which is very kind of big obstacle, actually, if you even overcome all the previous ones, then you have to be familiar with shell and with those Linux type of commands. There are only few solutions which are easy to use, and this is kind of additional education which is needed, which currently is not provided and not available for wide, let's say so, base of researchers, and this is stopping them from using because it's complicated. Yeah, that's actually it.
Thank you. So, thank you for additional challenges. One of the things you mentioned about the identity is connected with the service that was to some extent built for Lumi. MyAccessID, and Michael from GEÁNT, who is the architect focusing on the identity solutions, will tell a bit more about that.
Hello, thank you. So first of all, I am honored to be here today to have an invitation to this nice conference. And I started in GEÁNT and like 8 months ago because I have trust in this solution which I will be presenting to you as something which could actually help to users, researchers, students who needs to use resources behind HPC centers and different facilities which are providing those resources by their own way. Now, some of you probably heard about GEÁNT, some of not. GEÁNT is serves as a collaboration of European NRENs to provide them necessary support on the network part, AI identity part, let's say, and the necessary services they need to provide to help them to grow together, and also to cover the European kind of view on things, right? As each NREN is also focusing on their own national part. Now I will start with this design pattern on which the MyAccessID and the concept of community AI has been built upon. Now, the ARC blueprint architecture was designed by the ARC initiatives with the idea how to design something which could be useful for these kind of use cases to connect different identity providers to different portfolio of services, which could be connected by other proxies, and it could be actually pretty big chain of trust, of connection. Now you can see that the upper part is providing a different identity providers of the user's identity, where the below part is the connection to those services, and everything in the middle is something we are trying to achieve by providing a solution like MyAccessID. And this diagram is actually, let's say, a more concrete design of that blueprint architecture with MyAccessID in the middle as the infrastructural proxy, as the heart of that communication between those identity providers, represented here, for example, by the federated identities, EduGAIN, different HPC sites, community platforms, governmental IDs like EADAS and others, probably also in the future, the social identities, but that's a topic more connected to the feature, to the other features I will be today presenting here as a part of that solution. And the down part of this diagram is showing these infrastructure service domain layers. And those infrastructure service domains are those providers of services with their own solution they need to connect the users to. So they have a very often very customized and pretty complex solution. We need to connect to this infrastructure proxy and provide the proper policies and proper other functionalities and capabilities which are necessary in this complex world of identities. We already have onboarded the Puhuri with Lumi and Phoenix with Leonardo, so their users can access services in their portfolio. There are still some ongoing work with the Phoenix, but most of the work is already done. So we don't present something as just a design. We really have something which is working in its way, and we are improving on that. And to say this is actually the roadmap we have right now in our expectation, what should be done to the end of 2024, and we are focusing on some capabilities which was already mentioned here as the federated SSH access to hosts, the assuring of identities, and the second factor authentication, to provide it as capabilities of MyAccessID itself, so those identity providers or service providers wouldn't need to invest too much time to provide this by themselves. And it's also good to look at it as MyAccessID sounds like some like silver bullet, which is not. But what we are thinking about it as is it's some sort of a, let's say, number of tools working together towards a goal, which is connection of different parts of the research and education infrastructures towards the community platform. And that community platform we called the core platform. And as you can see in this diagram, built upon that, we have a MyAccessID, but not only MyAccessID. This is important for here, but we also support the student mobility. In this case, we have a MyAcademicID, and we are not thinking about them like two different tools. We are focusing on them in the same way, so all these functionalities and capabilities, if they will be needed, can be used in both cases. And cross-dimensional connections could be also used in the future. Now, I came here to more present those features, but also to make you think about it, and then probably not in this 15 minutes presentation, but later to come to me if you see some ideas how to use it, or maybe to ask me some questions regarding those features. As I'm more technical kind of person, I have some colleagues who are more political. Can you answer some other questions? But those are the things we are now focusing on from the perspective of a technical solution. Now, first of all, to have a, let's say, one unique ID for a researcher through the whole platform would be beneficial for them as a user, so they don't need to go through multiple registration flows if they are trying to achieve and access to different services behind the different infrastructures, which very often could be a case for some of them. Of course, they are coming from some environment, from some identity provider, and for some services, they need to have assured identities. So if the identity provider is not able to provide this, for them it could be a problem. Maybe they can use EADAS, but if not, then there needs to be a solution for them. So we are trying to cover this part by identity vetting process, which in this case means to provide another capability like the passport validation for them inside of MyAccessID. Of course, the most hot topic right now, almost everywhere, is to totally everywhere support the second factor authentication. It makes sense. It's a secure way of authentication. So also that is something, if it won't be part of the identity provider capabilities, we can provide it through MyAccessID as an optional solution. And as my colleague later after me will be showing an example of access through SSH to a host using the federated identity, this is something which we are also working on, and in this case we already have a solution, so that's why it can be actually showed today. And of course there are two other topics. For every infrastructure proxy, there is a pretty complex service management for registering the service, updating the service, providing, applying, and other things. So this is something we need to work on more to have a friendly solution for service providers and infrastructures. So that's another topic we are working on now, and maybe for some of you could be interest of support of ORCID in the future. Now, in those three diagrams, I wanted to give you a hint. I will not go through all these steps. It's more on you if you are interested in those topics and want to get more information how this would eventually work. But let's say on this picture, I'm showing the case how the user will try to access the service, which expects specific conditions, in this case, a second factor authentication. And what will happen if that second factor authentication is not provided by the identity provider of the user. So how this could be done from the MyAccessID point of view. It's not yet there, it's in development, but it definitely will be there, we expect in 2024. The same, very similar use case for a process of get assured identity. So if the user is coming, let's say from the social identity, that's easier way, and we don't know if the user is who he's saying he is, right? But if we can provide the validation process of his identity through passport or identity card of the governmental issued card, then we can be sure that the user is who is. And that's the way how we can find the optional way around it through MyAccessID to provide such a solution for those users. And the most complex case, because it's already done, so it has some technical information inside already, is the access of the users to hosts. And our goal is to make it as simple as possible for both sides. For user to not really install something heavyweight on their machines, and also for the hosts, for the infrastructures, for HPC sites, to not really need to overwork their solution they already have in place. So let's say in a vanilla solution for them as much as possible, and also to support it for not just Unix version of system, but also for some sort of a support for Windows. In this case, we are supporting a PuTTY and PowerShell in the Windows. And to summarize it, what's our benefits? What's the benefits of using MyAccessID from the perspective of the user or from the perspective of the infrastructure? So from the perspective of the user, we are really focusing on the experience of the user at the first place. And I'm not saying that we have the solution which is totally friendly for the user, but that's our goal. In the end, we want to have this solution as much as friendly as it could be. And to have this solution for the users, the way they don't need to create a registration process for each of resources they would like to use. And to cooperate with the infrastructures which are behind the MyAccessID to make this work. And from perspective of most of you and the others connected as the infrastructure service domains, we want to provide those capabilities, those functions and discussions and our expertise to make this work as much as possible and to help you to evaluate some of these capabilities, even if you are struggling with other things connected more to the work really connected to HPCs. And in the GEÁNT, we are focusing on this with a high priority, as we really think this makes sense and this matter. So that's for my presentation for you. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Just to mention that MyAccessID is also used by Estonian and Latvian national portals, so the adoption is growing. And next is then Mads with the demo. Meanwhile, Mads is working at in WAVE in DIKE, which is a Danish e-infrastructure collaboration. And the demo will be about... You'll have lots of pictures, right?
Just to scare you with the first image here. Okay. So I am Mads, and I'm coming from WAVE, which is a Danish higher education federation, and which is part of DIKE, which is the Danish Inland. But you can see the slides is in the GEÁNT template, and that's because I'm here as a subcontractor for GEÁNT, because I have made this SSH CA, and GEÁNT has chosen that as a part of their service, so I'm a provider of a service to GEÁNT. So it is a GEÁNT service that I must provide for them. And it has been a pleasure to actually do it, because we have dreamt in the web federated world to make something non-web for many years, and this is one of the solutions for that. And this is I don't know if you recognize it, but this was what Michal showed you before. So the plan is to I just had one remark. Sorry, I have changed the title of this one because, as Michael told you, MyAccessID takes care of all the MFA and stuff like that. We just use that as an IP for the identity and for the level of assurances. So this is not a kind of a specific SSH problem. This is taken care of by the OP, so to speak. So we will look into what is a SSH certificate, how does it help scale and secure SSH access, how to use the client, how to configure the server, and then I will try to do a demo at the end. Hopefully it will work. It had worked 50 times this day, so I hope it will continue to do that. And if you have any questions while I'm talking, just raise your hand and we will take that. So what is a SSH certificate? It's actually just a public key with a limited lifetime and some extra info. And this extra info can be information about a user, an identity, or it can be information about a server. Because there are two kinds of SSH certificates. There's one for users and one for servers. And what we're going to talk about today is only certificates for users, but we are looking into also see how we can provide certificates for servers. But the whole thing is signed by a third party, the SSH Certificate Authority. And the idea is that you don't kind of need to register every single user's or servers for that matter, public key for using that. You just register the public key of the CA, either as a user for the server certificates or as a server for the user certificates. A bit technical, the actual certificates are not like X509 certificates, which can scare a lot of people. They are kind of encoded in the SSH protocol encoding, so they're much simpler. But in all practical purposes, they are just at the user side like public keys. And here we have a dump of a user certificate. We have this is the actual user key, the key there, and we have a cert type. One is the user certificate. The key ID is the actual identity of the user in this case. And I'll come back to what that means. And then we have something called valid principals, and that's, in this case, it is the same as the actual identity of the user. This is the user ID from when I log into MyAccessID. You will get this ID as me. But it can also be used as kind of a role-based access in some cases. We will not use that here, but that you should be aware of it. There are other uses, there are other ways of doing it than the way we do it here. And then we have a validity period. The CAs we issue at the moment is a 1 hour certificates. They're valid for 1 hour. And then we have something called critical options, which I will just forget about, and then extensions. And we have two kind of SSH stuff here. You're allowed to make a sudo terminal, and you're allowed to forward your agent using this certificate here. Extensions can actually be anything. So it is actually possible to put claims into the certificates and use them for example, on-the-fly provisioning of users, if you want to do that. It does not make any sense in an HPC connection to do that, because you always have a allocation, so you are known beforehand. But in other circumstances, use cases, it could make sense. And then we have the signature for the CA here, or for the signature for the certificate signed by the CA. So how does it actually help scale and secure the success? And the scale is because we let MyAccessID take care of all the authentication, checking every stuff there. And MyAccessID has access to at least 5,000 IDPs in EduGAIN, plus what it has in the rest of the world. So it is scalable. And the security comes from that the public key is no longer your kind of your sole identity towards a server. The identity is in the certificate. So even if your private key gets stolen, when your short-lived certificate is run out, the kind of the thief of your private key has to log in with her or his own identity to actually have a certificate again. And that makes it much more sure. When we started this project, we had a kind of some meetings where we talked to people running large SSH things, and because it sometimes are very difficult to actually get your helpers. The PI, of course, has an account on the SSH, but sometimes the helping staff does not. So they cheat, and then they share the private key. So everyone's logged in as a PI. This is not possible to do this in this case. Yeah. So how do we configure the client? Very easily. You need to have some kind of Python thing, but you install the client, and then you run this generate thing, and where you see edit configuration. And in this case, you just say enter this URL. Both names will change in the future. But this is where the CA lives, and this is the name of a specific CA. We can run many CAs on the same in the same service here, and they can all use MyAccessID as their IDP. So depending on if a specific HPC installation wants their own CA, they can get that, and then of course you have a specific name for that here. And then you run, when this is a one-time thing installation, and then you run this command here, and then it comes up with a URL you have to open, so to speak. I have put open in quotes because I will show you after. Depends on your platform how you open it. But this is how you get from the kind of the shell-based thing to your browser-based login. And then we have I have a few slides about how to configure on the server. You have to tell SSHD which CAs it trusts. So here we tell them that the list of CA keys it trusts is in this file. We call it sakeys.pub. You can call it whatever you want. Just a list of public keys, not certificates for some peculiar reason, but public keys for the CAs you trust. And then you have what's called an authorized principals files, and this file is a mapping between the Unix username. This is a template for the username and the principal I talked about before. And the thing I put in the slides here is the actual configuration for the server I'm going to use afterwards. But of course, in a real environment, you will not have a file doing that. So you can. There's a command for doing that as well, where you can look up LDAP or wherever you want to do it. This up to you. And then I have commented out this authorized keys files is none, because this, if you don't comment it out, you will not allow people to log in with their normal public keys. And in the end, you don't want them to do that, because then can bypass all the certificate stuff. But in my case, I dare not do it, because I might be logged out. And here we have the list of CA keys we trust, and this is again just my current configuration, because I have a lot of CAs running as a test thing, and all the keys are here. They are not here because it would be very long lines, but it is Ivars keys, so they're not that long. By the way, we only support Ivars keys for the moment, and I don't know if we want to support anything else in the future. And then here we have the actual mapping between the ZZZ CCC user and the very long IDE I got from MyAccessID here. So now we will try to do a demo. And let us hope this will actually work. So here I have a terminal. I just wanted to make sure SSH add large S is, do I have anything in my SSH agent? No, I do not have anything there. No, I can't log in any places. But then I will try to call this thing here, generate thing. And then I get this URL I have to open. On a Mac, you command click it, and then it opens. And then I get to MyAccessID, and then I have to select my back-end IDP, so to speak. And this is the Technical University of Denmark, and I have to log in. And then MyAccessID, yeah, you are logged in, everything is fine. And I close this window again, and now we actually have something in the agent. And now I should be able to log into. It is the same machine, but it has another user. And you can see I logged in there, so everything is working. And just to prove that I'm not cheating, this is the tail of the authentication log on the machine, and you can see that I have logged in here with a certificate, and not just a public key that I had. I actually don't have a public key on this machine, so it all comes from the SSH agent. And that was the demo, and that was all I had to say.
Thank you. Any questions? Run back and forth.
Thank you for the demo. It's just I don't know who configures those middle pages, but there is missing about a bit of information. So if you end up this login page, it should say from where are you coming and what are you authentic for. Because after a while you are going to get multiple windows and you are going to mix up them and so. But otherwise, great job. Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The login view of MyAccessID is not very good, and I'm sure Michael will improve that. I actually have a question. And maybe this is a common question to you and to Michal. With the evolution of services, we get more and more cases when the user is not necessarily present when the interactions happen. It's like CI/CD flows or platform onboardings or whatever. How do you see the MyAccessID and maybe the SSH CA fit into these scenarios?
After you have gotten your certificate, it does see SSH as normal. Only limited by the lifetime of the CA. So it is just it just works as a public key with the exception that it only works as long as your certificate is valid. So that's a kind of policy discussion. Right now it is 1 hour, but it could be 5 hours, or it could be, for example, 36 hours. So you could kind of renew it every day you came to work, but then it would work even if you are not there. It is just SSH from here on. There's no standard SSH.
When you opened the website where you logged in, your account and password were filled in automatically. How does this comply with the overall security?
Do we have another microphone?
In my view, it complies very well because then I can't be phished. So it's actually almost a requirement for me to have it remembers my username and password from the browser. Yes. Yes. I would say it's safer than me. Maybe not looking at the URL and maybe enter my password at the wrong place. So, but of course, we should all use passkeys or FIDO or WebAuth or something like that.
It's also a good thing about it in a way that it could be connected to the second factor authentication.
Test.
So it could be part of it, right? You can use that differentiated access with a second factor authentication. It's another higher security way how to provide the authentication. So it could be combined in this case, because it doesn't have connection to the SSH itself. It has connection to the flow of authentication.
I have a completely different question. When I look at our industrial users, if they have HPC in their workflow, they try to automate everything that's possible. So the easiest for them is they start a job by pressing a button. So, but behind they have to log in, because in Stuttgart, for example, you have to use SSH. How does this work together with two-factor authentication? Can I fully automatize that, or is that kind of missing the point?
In my view, the original authentication you can not automate that, because you need the two-factor for logging into MyAccessID, and it depends on your use case if you allow it on the SSH. The idea is that you actually want to make it possible to do it without the user being present. But you can also have two-factor for the actual SSH key. It could be on a FIDO key as well. And if you set the the present user present flag, you have to be there to press it. Or if you use the web out, you actually have to either enter a code or use some fingerprint or something like that.
Would that be necessary to use it once a day?
Yes, that's the idea. Yeah. It depends on it's a policy thing. How often you can also even if whatever you do, you can always cheat what the certificate says, because you can say SSH capital M, and then it just keeps a connection. Even if you stop your actual session, it will keep a connection for some time. Yeah.
It can be even improved in this case, right? Because first of all, the flow behind, the authentication flow behind the OIDC, which we are using right now, could obtain the refresh token, the offline access. So you can narrow the scope of the SSH certificate to work as some sort of a solution behind the scene, where the new SSH certificate could be obtained with the offline token access with a narrow scope. So not used for everything what user can do, but only for the case which would be, let's say, tailored for this case. I saw some.
I have a question. How about files? Is secure copies working with this? If there needs a lot of files to transfer?
SSH, SCP uses SSH protocol, so it does work as normally. No. It is, for all practical purposes, a time-limited public key. So SCP works just as you normally do.
Yeah, it will work.
So you mentioned that for user, it's basically after generating the key, it's afterwards just a SSH session for that limited period of time. Then the question is who enforces the certificate? It's some separate service running on the host, or and then it keeps continuously checking if the session is still valid, key valid, I guess, on connection.
It is checked at login. I don't know of any kind of thing that throws you out, and I think in an HPC environment it would be not good thing to throw the users out, even if the certificates is. Maybe you have a thing running for a month or something like that, and it would not be nice to throw them out. But of course it is up to the server. If you want to implement that, you have to. But it's not part of the normal SSHD thing to throw you out if your certificate is not valid anymore.
Yes, regarding that, I can think about lots of solutions in the matter of the certificate checking, right? You have some list where if you will throw some certificate from it, you can always say, okay, this user shouldn't have an access revocation kind of list. But this needs to be set up in the infrastructure. And it's not really easy to set something like this up. So it's not part of what we are providing, but it could be definitely set up.
I think we should be aware that this is kind of today we just have the public keys, which is your identity, and it has no limit of the timeline. So what we are now we're saying this is that identity, and there's a limited timeline. It may be not the end of all kind of problems, but it solves some of the problems we have.
Some questions? Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have more time. Are there any questions to any of the speakers? Comments are also welcome.
Remembered one. This is about. We already have MyAccessID for our national HPC portal, as Ilja already mentioned. Yeah, but what is procedure for new users who would like to start using MyAccessID for their services? What is procedure?
Now, you are saying users. What does it mean? Does it mean the
service providers? I
okay,
mean,
service providers. Okay, so far we are not open in a way that everyone can reach us from the reasons of scalability. If everybody wants to be part of it right now, it would be hard to provide it in a way that it would be always in a place, always working. So we are doing step by step towards to be able to provide the scalability on the level for everyone who would join. So right now they need to reach us as a GEÁNT, as a MyAccessID, for example, both would work, and start discussion with us, and we will decide upon the discussion if it makes sense start now, because this use case makes sense and it could be done as soon as possible for usefulness of that project, or if we can manage it in the future, or it could be done somehow. We have many instances, not just MyAccessID. We have also something called EduTeams, which is still in place, and that's more like a testing kind of instance where we can provide it for those who wants to test their use cases, if that makes sense eventually to upscale to somewhere. Where MyAccessID is really in a controlled environment right now from our side to make sure that it will be working the way how we want to. But it's not closed, but so far it's driven to not be overwhelmed by the numbers of communities.
Just one additional remark to that. That is, we cannot kind of prohibit people from trusting a CA. So if we have a kind of a common MyAccessID CA, and you get and the user gets a certificate. If you have an environment where they say we trust this CA, then even if you are not registered at MyAccessID, you will be able to use it to log in there.
And also, it's good to say that we can manage not just that the user can get, the authorization of the user to even get such a certificate, right? So in MyAccessID level, in the process of authorized user to be able to obtain such a certificate, we can limit that. So eventually, if the user will be compromised, we can remove him, and eventually that the attacker wouldn't be able to get the new certificate at that time. So we can block him from getting a new SSH certificate at that time. So there are some ways how to prevent, let's say, the total misusage of that part?
Can maybe comment. I mean, this is slightly not as GEÁNT, but as a sort of consumer of MyAccessID. So it was initially designed as a service for access to the HPC, but over time, it sort of became useful for other cases as well, mostly supporting HPC. And now there is like a task force which involves sort of main adopters of the user, which is currently Phoenix and Puhuri, and now also UK with their eSupport machine. That is sort of driving the discussions about the usefulness of the features. And I think the eligibility or criteria of access and the feature set is something that hopefully will be coming out later this year, a bit more officially. So this would be more clear. So at the moment, let's say, I think as long as you are part of the Phoenix or Puhuri, that's solved case. If you want to establish your own, there is like a semi-formal process of doing that. I don't think that GEÁNT will object to any reasonable use case. Yeah, so I think that's this year's topic.
So if there's time, I have a question, might be trivial. I'm not sure I was very interested in your talk about the centralized SSH keys, and I'm not sure I followed it completely. So it's a service that you log in, and what it does at the end basically is place a pair of keys in your computer and in the computer where you want to log in. That's the end result. Is that it?
No.
Okay.
The client we're using here creates two keys, a key pair, and then it sends the public key together with an access token to the service, and then it gets back a certificate. It does not do anything on the remote end. That is kind of done by the administrators of the server. They have to manually, or whatever they do, enter the public key of the CA, of the specific CA they trust, into this list I showed you about. We trust, and it can be one, or it could be as many as you want to have.
Okay, then it's my knowledge of the whole thing that is a bit lacking. Thanks.
Kim, any questions, comments? No. Then I guess thank you very much. And that's it, I guess.
Thank you, Ilja, for leading the session. Now the day is over for the conference, day one. And I will remind you that at 6:30 there is one bus going from Iceland Hotel at the parking lot, going to Ostaskati, the restaurant we are having the conference dinner. And bus 2 will be at 7. So if you want to come by bus, see you at the parking lot. If you don't know the location, please use the QR code to find the parking lot. And thank you for today, for being such a patient audience. And yes, and see you tomorrow, not tomorrow. See you tomorrow here, but today at the restaurant. Thank you.